Welcome once again to my channel. For this particular episode of video, I'm going to teach you how to um, do file operations. All right, so it is very important that we learn to understand what a file is and how to write data into a file. Actually, before we learn to write data into a file, we also want to know the very essence of creating these files in programming. Okay, so quickly we'll go into the very fundamental concept. Files are directories on the machine where data is stored. Where data is stored. So for example, if you know how to use Word, how to use Excel database, or any file creator, that means you have created a file before. So when you create a file, a new document in Word, and then you save it, you have created a file. That file contains some content. Okay, so the same way in programming. In programming, we create files. The essence of creating a file may possibly be that we want to write our source code into it. So, for example, in this text editor, Sublime, I am using here, you may want to write your source code into it, and then you save it. All right, so it will contain your code whilst you append it to a compiler. Now, in this situation, the essence of creating files in programming is that in the previous examples that we have worked on, we tend to understand that at all point we had lost the data when we close the application. When you close your code and then you come back to it, every data that you had entered previously, you have lost them all. You can't revisit them. So we're going to learn in this situation how to create a file, and then the file will keep this information. However, I want to quickly mention that what we're going to learn to create now is not a database. Databases are much more organized, they are much more arranged than it is with these test files that we're going to learn to create. All right, so like I said earlier, before we even look into writing data into the file, we will need to look at the file operations itself. All right, so quickly we're going through it. One, for you to be able to use the file must be open. Okay, the file must be open. Number two, when the file is open, now you have the chance to either read from or write into the file. Okay, so the first process is opening the file. The second process is to either read from or write into the file. The last process is to close the file. So one, you open; two, you read or write from or to the file, and then when you are done with these tasks, the very final thing you do is to close the file. Quickly, I must also include that um, there are two types. There are two types of files. One is binary file, and then two we have text file. Binary files more often do contain complex, sorry, just supposed to be one E, complex data structures. So more often in these binary files, they will need an interpreter to tell or translate the content of the binary file into a readable form, or that way could be used by the computer system. Okay, the microprocessor needs to be able to compute it and then execute it. With the text file is made up of the regular string data that could be used, or they contain human readable information. Okay, so in this particular session and subsequently in this example of file, what we're going to learn to use is to create files, but only the text file and not binary. Okay, I'm going to put all the emphasis on text files and not the binary. Okay, now how do you write data into the file? In Java, to be able to write data into a file, we'll be making use of a function called, we'll be making use of a class called print writer. Okay, so just like in the earlier concept with I introduce you to the scanner class, you create an object for the scanner class and then you use that to receive input from the standard keyboard. Okay, likewise in the swing class, you make reference to the GeoShim pane, and that library will help you to now do graphical design interface. Likewise, now to be able to write into a text file, we will need to use the print writer. Now, in using the print writer, it will imply we would have to create an object for the print writer. Okay, so we will need to create an object. We can call that output file, and then we introduce the new operator that will help us to create a memory location for the object that is created, okay, with its related attribute. And then we follow that with a print, suppose print writer, and then in between these parentheses we introduce the quotation marks, and then we write the name of the file we would want to create and then write into. So we want to call it, let's say, my first file, and then we include the extension .txt, which will imply you want to create a test file. When we have done this, number one, we have fulfilled exactly as the instruction is here, that the file is opened. Okay, now to be able to write into the file, we have fulfilled step one, the file is open. How do we write into the file? We use the object, the name of the object of the class print writer, which is output file, followed by the dot operator, and then this will give us access to the print functions, either the print line or print, and by this we are able to write into the file. So we will write, let's say, hello colleagues. It means that in the file, the first thing we're going to see in the file is hello colleagues. If you want to write another statement, you still have to make use of the object, and then that will give you access to either print or print line, and then you write your statement. This is on the second line. You terminate it. So maybe if you are satisfied with these things that you want to write, then the last thing you do is you close the file. So we use the function close. Okay, so practically in Java, we would have fulfilled the three operations. We have opened, we have written into the file, and we have closed the file. So on line 14 here, we have created a file, or we have opened the file. On line 15 and 16, we have written into the file, and then in the very last line, we have closed the file. Okay, so this is the theoretical concept in having to create a file and write it into the file. Hold on and stay on and watch the next episode as we do demonstration of how to do this task, but now in the Java environment.